Hello, everybody. We're going to get started. We were just waiting for a few more to join. Welcome to our second webinar in the Active Classroom Webinars series. We're happy to have you here. This webinar is titled Principals' Perspectives on the Benefits of Active Classrooms. My name is Allie, and I'm a Program and Field Coordinator at Action for Healthy Kids. I will be running all of the logistics behind the webinar. If you have any logistical problems or questions, please feel free to chat in the chat box. I'm joined by my colleague, Charlene Bergeson, who is the Executive Director of Active Schools, and she will be helping guide us through the webinar and explaining to you what Active Schools is if you need a little refresher. We're also joined here by two special guests. The first one that we'll have speak today is Martha Harris, and she is the founder and CEO of Fizika Group. It's a professional development firm which focuses on brain science based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I just learned this morning. Fizika means physical activity, movement, and measurement. And so she works to connect movement to brain activity in students. Next, after Martha, we'll have Cyrus Weinberger speak with us. He is the principal at Soaring Heights Pre-K through 8 in Erie, Colorado, and he has had incredible success within his school with the implementation of active classrooms and teaching students the connection between movement and brain function. So those will be our special guests, and then at the end we'll have a Q&A session. So thank you for joining us. All right, so just a few logistics before we get started. Listen in with your telephone or computer speakers. Everybody will be muted for the duration of the webinar. And if you have any questions for us, any of us, please submit them through the question box or the chat box. Either one, there's a Q&A function or a chat function. This call is being recorded. We will send out a follow-up email with a webinar evaluation recording of the webinar, and then also the handouts and the slides will be attached there as well, and then you'll get a participation certificate as well. Here's our agenda. We're going to go through an overview of active schools. Charlene will do that for us, and then we'll have Martha speak, and then after that we'll have Cyrus speak, and at the end we'll have a Q&A. So unless the question is urgent, please hold your questions to the end. You can submit them whenever you think of them, and we'll just hold them until the end, and I'll run that for us at the end. Now I'm going to hand it off to Charlene.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're thrilled that you want to hear about principals' perspectives on active classrooms. Hopefully that means that your school is doing some active classroom work or is wanting to do some. So as Allie said, I'm executive director of the national movement called Active Schools, and we believe that every kid has the right to at least 60 minutes a day of physical activity in the before, during, and after school hours, and that every school has the responsibility to provide it. We also know that schools are busy places, and our goal is to make it easier for them to provide an active school environment. So not to add on to what a school and its staff are required to do, but to give you strategies to integrate into what you already do. Next. So these two graphics, these models may look familiar to a lot of you. The one on the left is the whole school, whole community, whole child model, where it shows the aspects of support that kids need to be healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged. And one of those is physical education and physical activity. So then we blow that up into the model on the right, which we call the Comprehensive School Physical Activity Program. And basically it is showing all the ways that a school environment can provide and support physical activity. So that would be physical education as the foundation, where teaching and learning occurs about movement, and then opportunities during school and before and after school And then involvement and support from staff, family, and community. It takes a village to raise an active, healthy, happy child. Next. And so active schools, what are we doing to help schools create these active environments? Well, we work on two fronts. And the first is we support schools in their current reality by being a hub for the best practices, programs, and resources that school staff and volunteers can use. There's a lot of resources out there. And sometimes the hardest part is just finding them. And sometimes the hardest part is accessing them or affording them. And so we also have partners who give discounts and give grants and give free support like webinars. And we want to put that all in one place for you to find so you can use it. Now, the heavier lift of what we're trying to do as the Active Schools movement is really create a better reality, which is to increase the prioritization of physical learning, physical movement in our schools. We really want kids to be educated as a whole child on the academic, the socially emotional, and the physical fronts. And so we are advocating and bringing resources to the table to increase that physical aspect of learning. So what is this webinar series all about? Well, it's part of a focus that we have on active classrooms year-round, but that we're particularly emphasizing during the winter months when so many people are indoors more often than they are in the nicer weather. We had Active Classrooms Week for people to tell their stories of what's going on in their classrooms and their schools. That was earlier in December. And then we kicked off our first webinar in mid-December, and we have this one and then 5 more through the months of January and February. And they're all free, they're all 45 minutes, they're all very practical. So please sign up for as many as you can. And then we have 8 active classroom grant opportunities made available by our partner organizations. They're open now and they close on February 28th. You can click on this other link to read about all 8 of them. You can apply for as many as you'd like. And by participating in these webinars, 1 or more, you get a bonus points of 5 points per webinar to go towards your grant application. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Okay, so now I'm going to welcome Martha Harris to talk to us about Fizika and her work.
Great. Why don't we go to the next slide, Allie? That would be great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really an honor to be here with such a distinguished group of people focusing on an issue that really drove Fizika to be formed in the first place. We wanted to close the gap between students who need to learn kinesthetically and the way teaching was actually occurring. So active classrooms is a really important focus of the Active Schools movement, and we're delighted that so many of you have joined us in this webinar today. We're going to focus on the very important role of principals in teaching and learning. As Cyrus will share, the leadership that he's exhibited at 2 K-8 schools in the St. Vrain School District is really a model for what we would love all the schools in America to do by implementing the whole school, whole community, whole child model. Let's go to the next slide. Why is it so important? Yes, that 60 minutes is a desired goal, but the reason is because our kids are losing out. If you look nationally at the statistics, the most recent national report card reveals declines in student achievement in both math and reading. Compared to their colleagues around the world, this is going to have an impact on global competitiveness and America's role in that. And we believe at Fizika that a lack of physical activity in school reduces learning readiness, attention, and focus. There's much research that's come out since Dr. John Rady published his book, Spark. That was about the same time I was putting my first business plan together for Fizika. And I'm very encouraged by the laser focus that Active Schools is now using through its collective impact model to encourage all schools to increase the amount of physical activity so that all students can learn. Let's go to the next slide, Allie. Why are principals so important? Well, over the past 10 years, Fizika has worked with dozens of principals in large, small, urban, and rural school districts. There's a common denominator that I've observed. The best principals have a laser focus on student success and staff wellness. They operate safe, healthy learning environments that are based on a fundamental understanding that many of us, if not most, learn kinesthetically. We learn by doing and at our own pace. Professional development can help educators realize the benefits of brain-based approaches to learning through movement, creative play, and project-based learning. That same approach can also increase students' ability for social and emotional learning. That's the number one concern that we hear across the country today. How do we get kids to be kinder, to have an understanding of personal space, and to respect each other and their teachers? We believe that physical literacy and health literacy instruction is critical to that. Let's go to the next slide. Physically active classrooms help students learn better. This is an example of a fourth grade school at Fulton Elementary in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where we worked closely with the principal there. He said, Martha, I'm a kinesthetic learner. I get fidgety legs. I want to train all of our staff. So we were able to get a grant for this school, and we were able to train all the staff, from the lunchroom aides to the recess aides to the classroom teachers, on how to infuse appropriate movement, intentional movement, into their learning and teaching instruction. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, we skipped a slide there, Gally. Thank you. So our framework, we follow the whole school, whole community, whole child model, all aspects of it. But a particular focus of our work in professional development is to focus on the synergy between health literacy, which are the goals of national health education standards, and physical literacy, which is the goals, obviously, of the national physical education standards. The synergy comes through the kinesthetic learning, where in the classroom, those very important skill sets can be reinforced while students are learning the specific disciplines that are being taught in the classroom. Let's go to the next one. This is a well-quoted slide from active living research, but I like to include it in these types of presentations, particularly to principals, because it documents through a meta-analysis the actual academic benefits of more physical activity. Physical activity at school is a win-win for students and teachers. 20% of students are more likely to earn an A in math or English. Standardized test scores go up 6% over 3 years. Just one physically active lesson increased students' physical activity for the week. And most importantly, from a teacher's perspective, it decreases the amount of time that teachers have to spend managing student behavior or addressing erratic behavior that can be disruptive to learning. The brain scans captured below by Dr. Chuck Hillman for this work on Illinois students illustrates that when we're sitting, our brains are inactive, but 20 minutes of walking energizes our brain. So why not infuse physical activity before a student takes a test or before a more difficult subject matter for that student so they can pay more attention? Memory tasks improve. So it's a win-win all the way around. That's why we've been excited to partner with the Active Schools movement from its inception. An example from one of the schools we've worked with here in Pennsylvania is Pequea Valley High School. It's a very small rural school district where their head of wellness, their high school physical education teacher, took our active learning course and put together a study to see if he could help 10th and 11th grade students improve their understanding of math and statistics by collaborating with a math teacher, the teacher of statistics, and bringing some of that statistical knowledge into his physical education space, into the gym. And as you can see through this chart, the impact on both the understanding of the relevance of math and the understanding of statistics went up through the kinesthetic learning collaborative cross-curricular pilot that they did. They're now looking at ways that they can extend that same type of interaction, faculty collaboration, working with each other to improve learning outcomes across the district. So in the microcosm it works, and in the meta-analysis it works. Oh, excuse me. So they also did a very good job of capturing how did the learners feel. And across the board, the learners who participated in that kinesthetic learning pilot found that their focus increased, they were more motivated, they had higher energy levels, and their academic performance increased. So it achieves all the objectives of what a school is really all about, teaching and learning so students can thrive. Let's go to the final one. We're very pleased to announce a new version of our active learning course that will be the Kinesthetic Learning Specialist course. We're in development for it now. It will be available later this spring. We're accepting applications through the grant program for scholarships. We've gotten some outstanding applications from teachers around the country, but you have until February 28th. There will be 4 modules in the course: building blocks for kinesthetic learning, really understanding how health and physical literacy connect to kinesthetic learning, the pedagogy and the research that supports kinesthetic learning, how to help students self-regulate and improve their social and emotional learning skills in a kinesthetic learning classroom. And then lesson 4, how do you organize a classroom to support physical activity in kinesthetic learning through age-appropriate developmental interventions. So we're very excited about it. I'm collaborating with Kathy Dean, a preeminent health and physical educator in Arizona, who's probably on this webinar. So shout out to Kathy Dean. We're delighted to have the opportunity to promote it, to make it available across the country through the Active Schools program. So that's my contact information, which you can certainly get when the slides are shared with you. I'll turn the program over to Allie. Thank you very much. Look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Martha. Once again, we will be sharing these slides and everybody's information with you, with all of you watching in our follow-up email. So next, I'd like to welcome Cyrus Weinberger from Erie, Colorado.
Thanks so much for having me today. It's a pleasure to be here. If you want to go ahead and advance the slides there. You can go ahead to the next slide. So it might be a surprise, but after being in education for 21 years, some people find it interesting that much of my elementary and middle school career was actually spent in the principal's office. In fact, I was often there so much that I even had a book to read in the office, which was kind of exciting, but not so much for my principal and my teachers. So today I'm really going to tell you a story about cultural change in schools, about hope and transformation, a story about some of the challenges that I've run into in terms of bringing physical activity into schools and sort of the next steps. Tell you a little bit more about how I began to realize that for my own learning, but also really use physical activity as a catalyst for curriculum innovation. And one of the key pieces with that is to understand that a rigorous academic environment needs to be coupled with physical activity to produce really phenomenal results. And that's a really important point as you talk with either your administrators or parents or other teachers or those pieces. You really always have to couch physical activity within the environment of a rich academic environment, so that one goes with the other, so that you're not just saying, well, we just do physical activity and everything is going to be perfect. It really does need to be coupled with a real serious academic environment with lots of opportunities for students to explore that. And that's going to be critical in finding success. So I believe that public education can be transformed through physical activity. I believe that it's critical for students in a rapidly changing world where a global international economy, and it's incredibly important for them to be able to think logically and critically, to be able to collaborate with one another, to show empathy for one another, and those are going to be the things that are going to most give people the skills to be successful in the future for jobs that we don't even know necessarily that exist right now. And so In order to do that, I think you really do need to combine the tenets of a traditional curriculum with well-defined standards and clear objectives, with opportunities for students to experience those hands-on, project-based collaborative works. And a critical component of involving that is physical activity, as well as the development of emotional intelligence and self-awareness, so that people are able to really enhance their ability to not only prepare for stressful situations, but also work as a group. So today, what I'm hoping that you'll get is just a real vision for how Red Hawk Elementary and Soaring Heights were developed, and then get a kind of brief balcony view of how neuroscience really impacts education and beyond, and then also an understanding for just how successful this programming has been to support students and parents alike, teachers. So as a kid, I started out, I was a bright, funny, and very hyperactive kid. I drove my teachers crazy. I was always running around. I was distracting people. I was talking out of turn. Sometimes I was even a little handsy with people and would hurt people accidentally. And again, like I said, because of that, I was pretty good friends, along with my mother, with just about every principal I ever had. And so my teachers all said the same thing, that he's bright, he's has so much potential if he would just be focused and keep his hands to himself. And so that was something that really plagued me. And then when I was around probably in third or fourth grade, I discovered running, and I started going to running clubs and track practice, and I was fast and I was competitive, and I really began to associate physical activity with my ability to actually focus and be able to follow directions and to really get done what I needed to do. And so this was something that I really took on and helped me be very successful throughout the rest of my academic career. So even in college, I played lacrosse and soccer, and I would really recognize the importance of physical activity before things that were high stress. So job interviews or presentations or any of those things, I really just made sure that I always got that physical activity. And so like today, I just did 20 push-ups right before I started here. So just to make sure that I was focused. So that was something that I really brought into my own life as a student. If you want to go ahead and switch slides. So then as a teacher, before becoming a principal, I taught fourth grade for 7 years down in Durango, Colorado. And here we are, we're at a mine up in Silverton. And I recognized in my students many of the things that had kind of plagued me and made school an uncomfortable place to be. And so I often allowed kids to stand up inside the classroom. We took a lot of activity breaks, started a running club before and after school, and really allowed kids to do what they needed to as far as moving, as long as they were paying attention. And I noticed that this really helped improve a lot of academic outcomes and just performance-based outcomes for many of my students. And that was something that I had done intuitively for many years as a teacher and also as a student. And so that also my prior experiences really allowed me to develop a lot of compassion and empathy for those students that might not fit into that traditional mold. So around this time, I read the book Spark, and I realized that a lot of what I had kind of figured out over the years really was based on brain science that was very much proven with over 20 years of research. And I quickly realized that, wow, we're onto something, and this isn't something that I just figured out on my own, but is actually based on what Dr. Rady really kind of terms as miracle grow for the brain. And so all the things that you want to see in your classroom, whether it's attention or focus or fewer behavior issues, things that are often hard to reach, can be achieved through physical activity. And the great thing about it is it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. You don't need to use big expensive programs or things. Most of the resources that we use at our schools are available in every school. And so it's things like popsicle sticks or cones or a projector, things that all schools have or you can easily provide. And so I took this kind of knowledge and information, and this was right around the first part of my principalship. And I took over for a school that had a pretty entrenched staff that had been there for a long time. And, I began to really try to persuade people that about the importance of physical activity. And I ran into, quite a bit of, pushback. The prevailing notion that the more time you spend in seats, the better students are going to perform was something that was really hard to overcome. And I spent a lot of time showing the research with parents, with teachers, providing times during the day where this could happen, and made some progress. But really, just being a new principal and being, there that wasn't real successful in doing that. But I still knew that my experiences in the classroom, as well as my experiences as a learner, really were related to the importance of physical activity. So it's something that I certainly didn't give up on, but it was certainly I spent a lot of time thinking about and talking with teachers and parents about. And then in 2010, I had the opportunity to open up a brand new public school called Red Hawk Elementary. And I spent a lot of time asking people, what it is that they most want in their school. And what I heard was they wanted a rigorous academic environment, but they also wanted their kids to be happy and healthy. And all of my previous experience really, sparked my interest again to really bring physical activity and health and wellness into our school. And so with that, from the very inception, we integrated 35 to 40 minutes of rigorous activity into the school day in addition to recess and PE. So the entire school in the morning would begin with 20 minutes of physical activity, and that could be outside doing relay races or tag games. It could be a walk within the school. It could be circuits or a Go Noodle video or a number of different things in the classroom, and that was on a rotation. And then on Fridays, we would bring, as you can see in this picture, the entire school together and spend, we'd have a leadership team, and they would lead the school in those activities. And it was just tremendously successful, both from a confidence level, but also from the perspective of just creating a great community feel. And so in the beginning, it was a little bit difficult to get people on board, but once kids and teachers had gotten used to it, I would say in about year 2 or 3 is really when everyone, it was impossible not to have movement in the school. And I've been at a different school now for over 2 years, and movement still continues there very, very well. And so that's been great. We also were really successful. We won $100,000 from Child Obesity 180, and so that was really terrific. And then we also began to scale this model of how do we bring physical activity into classrooms to a variety of different school districts across the state of Colorado and beyond. And we did have some support from the Colorado Health Foundation and Kaiser as well to do that. And so that's been a great experience, and we're still teaching classes today through the University of Northern Colorado. So then 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to start another new public school, and we're Soaring Heights K-8. It's also here in Erie, and currently we have about 1,200 students, and so that's been a great journey. And so in preparing for this, I had a whole series of community meetings, and I again asked everyone what it is that they most wanted in their school. And what we found was what I expected, which was academic achievement, STEM activities, critical thinking, collaborations, all the things that really were important at Red Hawk. But something that kept coming up again and again that I hadn't expected was the desire for empathy, for kindness and service, and mental health and social emotional learning. And all of these things really rang true to my experiences and what I knew to be true, but I didn't really expect that that would be verbalized by the community. And so as I started to really think about, well, what does that mean? I started to think about the hard sciences like biology and chemistry, physiology, along with things like computer science and programming and robotics, artificial intelligence, virtual reality. We have a variety of those kinds of labs here. And I also knew that we needed to bring in this concept of empathy and physical activity and overall health and wellness for the whole child. And as I was thinking about these things, and these were swirling around in my mind, I realized, or rather a friend of mine told me, there's a name for that, and it's called neuroscience. And so here at Soaring Heights, we have an emphasis on STEM education through a neuroscience lens. And a big part of neuroscience is the effect of physical activity on the brain. If you want to switch slides there. So, why neuroscience is a question I get all the time, especially, that you're in a K-8 school. And really, neuroscience is the perfect vehicle for bringing together a variety of disciplines in a way to propel students into the scientific process and develop a rich understanding of how the brain functions. And to be able to do that, it allows students to really prepare for stressful situations, allows students to recognize others who might be in different states, and to be able to collaborate with them. And so that really brings some of this increased self-awareness and the ability to collaborate and to learn at a very high level. And a big part of that is related to physical activity in terms of what actually happens to your brain through physical movement. And so the more students understand how that works and the different components of the human brain, the more they're able to then prepare again for stressful situations and for being able to really have a situation where they're prepared for whatever life throws at them, which is ultimately what we want to see have happen. So we broke that again. I spoke to that a little bit, but we really broke it into 3 different kind of categories, which are the hard sciences, creative expression and collaborative structures, and having movement be a big part of that, and then our computer science piece. And so the vehicle for doing that, if you want to change to the next slide, really is looking at creating 3 different modules or themes of oceans, land, and space. And we begin each one of those with a series of neuroscience experiments, and then we move into design thinking challenges. So for 30 minutes every day, students at all levels around the same theme are able to really dig into something that they're interested in, and then provide a series of experiments, and then create a product. So for example, like in 8th grade, we have students that are learning about action potential and how neurons travel down the spinal cord, and we're able to actually use a TENS machine to mimic that and show that in someone else's movement from one person can be carried over to a different person. Or another thing is we might study the body's stress response, and so we might look at using virtual reality on a roller coaster to measure heart rate and then determine which parts of the roller coaster were the scariest, right, in terms of how the body responds. And so again, it creates this hands-on project-based learning environment where students are moving, and they're also able to, some students are able to shine in a way that they're not able to in a traditional environment. And then some students, the really high ability students, are not constrained by a particular curriculum and able to really research and move forward in a way that has no limits. So we talk about how, to include neuroscience. And so we use the language of input, processing, and output. And so everyone has things that they see or sense, and then our brain processes them. And then we have an output, whether that's a movement, a thought, or a feeling. And we've worked really closely with the neuroscience program at Anschutz Medical Campus to help us refine those pieces. And it's just been a terrific success. In fact, we are close to open enrollment at this point. We have about over 100 people want to enroll outside of our attendance area, and we reached our capacity within the first year of being open. So it's been a tremendous success. We continue to integrate neuroscience and physical activity daily. Students here still receive that 35 to 40 minutes of rigorous activity. So I think, if I'm correct, we should have about 6 minutes to show the video. Charlene, is that? Okay, great. So this is a video we put together here at the school to really help demonstrate some of the things that we're doing. So I can't hear anything. I don't know if everyone else can, but.
Sorry, that was me. Let me go ahead and share this. Nope, still can't hear it. Sorry, everyone. Okay, there we go. Now, let me know.
Are experiencing so many changes and you're learning so much new stuff. Learning about your brain and how it works can help you manage it all a lot better.
So we see our neuroscience framework and philosophy manifest itself in two kind of specific ways in the primary level. One of them that was kind of unexpected is behavior management. So if the basics of neuroscience are that there's an input and then everyone processes that input and then there's some kind of output, you can talk to kiddos in behavior management situations. For example, if someone doesn't line up when it's time to line up for recess, or someone's having a meltdown, you could say, everyone got my same input. I did say it was time to line up, but your brain processed that in a different way. Can you help me understand why you're doing what you're doing? It makes the kids more self-aware, and I think it makes teachers more aware of the diversity, the brain diversity in their classroom.
We're going to be using 360 cameras to create some social emotional learning opportunities using virtual reality. So this is a really great opportunity for kids to experience model behaviors, for example, how to line up properly as a class, or to put kids in a situation where they can gain some empathy.
In third grade, we've spent some time talking about how students can control their emotions. And so if they were at a 2 or a 3 or even potentially a 1, that's an extended conversation where you can ask students, hey, why do you think you might be feeling that way? What strategies could be used for you to be able to get to a 4? And then if they are reflecting and saying, my brain is controlled, I'm at a 4, then they could have that reflection time to say what strategies they're using.
we're able to talk to these kids about why is it important to know your own brain? Why is it important to understand your emotions and the messages that they send us to fully understand who they are and to be confident individuals moving forward in learning?
A test or some question on an assignment, then learning those ways of your brain, how it reduces stress or how your brain handles stress or anxiety, then you can actually reduce that by doing those techniques that you actually learned.
One way you can calm your brain is just taking really deep breaths, and it acts like it doesn't seem like it would do that much, but it does.
The other big manifestation of neuroscience that I see just as a teacher is that you can frame different academic subjects differently. So for example, at Soaring Heights, kindergarten went to the zoo, but it wasn't a normal zoo trip. It wasn't the kind where you just kind of scurry about and look at the animals. Every child had a neuroscience notebook, and they had their pages divided into two sides, an input side and an output side. The input sides looked very similar. The kids were drawing the animals that they saw and the animals' habitat, but the output side was sort of left up to them. So it was really interesting to compare notebooks at the end and see, what was your brain thinking when it decided to draw that picture?
We use neuroscience a lot in computer science and robotics because being able to understand how the brain receives and processes information allows us as designers to build better programs and better robots. And being able to understand how information is received and outputted with robotics, then we can build better robots that mimic human actions and can automate things that, really better society.
The strength of our neuroscience framework really lies in that vertical alignment. So to summarize, in elementary school, they're focusing on that there's an input through your senses and that you're processing through your brain. And then you have some sort of output, a behavior or thought. And they're really focusing on mindfulness and ways to self-regulate. And in middle school, they're starting to dive deeper into that neuroscience content about the different types of neurons. There's different systems within your nervous system. Students then take their knowledge and apply it to real-world problems using the design thinking process in our 3 different modules: land, ocean, and space. For example, in middle school, students are learning about their stress response system, and they did a bunch of different research using EKG machines and seeing what different types of stimuli affect their sympathetic system. So for example, does their heart rate increase or decrease in different types of situations? They used virtual reality experiences to do this. They found empathy for their users. They interviewed their peers, different stakeholders of Soaring Heights. They defined the biggest problems within those interviews. And then they brainstormed different solutions. They created prototypes. An example was that a group of students said their user was extremely anxious about the core subjects he didn't understand. So they came up with this idea of an app that students could swap skills. So they knew there was a tutor time and different things you could build knowledge with teachers, but they wanted to learn from each other. So if one student was really good at playing the trumpet and another student was amazing at solving algebraic equations, then they could have that on the app, sort of like a Facebook profile. And then they could share that and they could meet and swap skills. And now they're testing their prototypes on their users and they're collecting authentic data using EKG machines and heart rate monitors.
Soaring Heights is such a unique school. We focus a lot on our movement, so we have a bunch of brain breaks, and we also have flexible seating throughout the whole entire school. And we also have our innovation time. So we are learning about emotions, stress, and how to handle that. And we also are learning how our brain works and how it inputs information, and then we output it by our actions. So overall though, neuroscience is definitely the heart of it all.
Hopefully that gives people a flavor of what we've been doing and a bit about just how to bring physical activity and health and wellness to your school. I really want to underscore that, while we've been fortunate, I have worked with a lot of different schools and principals and teachers from all different sort of areas, and really it's a matter of political will and communication for bringing physical activity and health and wellness to your schools. Thank you for listening, and be happy to answer any questions either here or you can always contact me as well. So.
Thank you, Cyrus. And now we're going to open it up to any questions that anybody has. We did have one come in earlier, and I really like this one. So it says, physical activity is important for all children, but oftentimes students with disabilities are not fully included in these opportunities within their own school environment. Do either one of you have strategies to share on how you include students with disabilities in your programs?
I'll be happy to take a crack at that, Allie, and leave time for Cyrus, because I'm sure he has thoughts as well.
Sure.
I started this company because of my own daughters have intellectual disabilities, and I was passionate about making sure that all students can learn. In our professional development work with either live or in person, we emphasize that any physical activity that a teacher does must be adaptive, meaning you don't isolate the child who can't do it. You create an opportunity for any children that have limited abilities to also participate by adapting the physical activity. That's a really important component, and I am grateful for the question, because I think it often goes unsaid, but it's critical to not exclude children with limited abilities, but to figure out other strategies that they can be engaged.
Thank you, Martha. Go ahead, Cyrus.
Yeah, I would just echo a lot of that. We've had, I would say also that students with special needs often benefit the most from physical activity and health and wellness. At our school, we have a variety of different programming. So we have a typical resource special education program. We also have both an elementary and middle school SSN program, which is significant support needs. So those are kids in wheelchairs or feeding tubes or a variety of pretty significant disabilities. And then we also have both an elementary and middle school group of affective needs students, so students with emotional disabilities. And so the strategies, I think, are first engaging all students to help participate and create that routine. And then, like Martha said, really making sure that everything is modifiable. So, and we do that a lot, even like with this picture here, kids doing push-ups, right? You could have kids doing push-ups on their knees. If a kid's in a wheelchair, maybe they're doing some arm movements. There's lots of different ways to express, sort of dancing or moves that way. So there's just, I think it's building that routine, and then oftentimes engaging the community to help really support students in being able to be part of whatever's going on. And so we've even had students before on wheelchairs actually lead all school movement. So.
Yes, and I saw that in live in Naperville when I had a chance to tour Naperville Central High School. They teamed able-bodied students with children in wheelchairs, and I think both students learned a lot about character and compassion and empathy by working together. There's a national program called I Can Do It, You Can Do It, which is free. You can find it through the HHS website, and they're also a partner in the Active Schools movement. I would encourage anyone who's interested in really understanding how best to incorporate children with different abilities into an inclusive physical activity movement to look at those strategies. The I Can Do It, You Can Do It program.
Thank you, both of you. We're running out of time. I'll just ask one more question that we had come in. Probably for Cyrus, maybe for both of you. Do you create your own neuroscience curriculum?
Yeah, so we did create it. We meet monthly with the Anschutz Neuroscience Program, and then based on that, we came up with the idea of input, processing, and output. And so we then link that to our different themes, whether oceans and looking at, different animals that have different brain functions and how they evolved. Maybe look at dolphins, for example, or eyesight, things like that. So the short answer to that is yes, we did develop a lot of that. The other piece of it is we connect that with our social emotional learning program, which we did not create, which is called In Focus. And so that also uses neuroscience to describe the different parts of the brain in terms of where emotions come from, where fight or flight, reasoning, all of those pieces. So, and if you're interested in that, please write us. That's not something that we have as a secret. We're certainly willing to share that.
Great. So I think that's all the time we have for questions. Thank you both, Cyrus and Martha. So that's all for our webinar today. Thank you for joining our webinar on Principals' Perspectives on the Benefits of Active Classrooms with Martha Harris and Cyrus Weinberger. Just a reminder that this is an Active Classrooms webinar series. So we do have 5 more webinars after this. The one that we have coming up next is on Thursday, January 16th, and it is talking about integrating physical activity into classroom instruction. So please make sure to register for that. We will have a registration link in the follow-up email, as well as all of these slides, a recording, and other resources linked from this webinar. So thank you for joining us. We hope you have a happy, healthy, and active start to the new year. Bye, everybody.